What's going on, you guys? So today we're installing a frequently asked performance mod on my channel, which is the 271 Turbo Inlet Pipe, which fits the 2022 Civics and Integra 1.5 liter engines. I've always wanted to get one of these and it's finally in my hands. They have been back ordered and I pre-ordered these a month ago and it's finally here. So I'm super excited to get this unboxed and let's go ahead and install it together once I have everything out. So here's a closer look. We got a 271 sticker and also a photo of their 11 Gen SI, which is actually really nice. And a little note, enjoy your week, Sam at 271. Little nice note and picture. We got the 271 towel here. Looks like the Monster logo, which is really sick. There we go. Really well packaged. And I really like how thick this foam is on top here. Really makes it all secured. And there it is. We got the Turbo Inlet Pipe itself. And then we got more packaging in here, which is awesome. 271 never disappoints when it comes to packaging their stuff really well, so that's great. And then we have the hardware in here. Let's go ahead and get this out as well. So we got some clamps in here, and then we also have some more hardware and some gaskets here as well, and then some tubing that we'll have to modify later on. And then we have the coupler, which goes for the cold air intake that I have on from 271 as well, which is the hybrid one. So you have options on there if you have the PRL high volume intake or the 271 short rim intake or just a stock. Make sure you choose the right option on there. We got some bolts and some brick nuts, screws here, so we'll go ahead and figure all that stuff out later. So let's get out the Turbo Inlet Pipe itself here. Oh man, look at this thing. This thing is so pretty. Here's a closer look at what came out of the box, and then here's a closer look at the textured black powder coat finish, and man, does this look nice. And you can also get this in the natural raw aluminum option, but the DBoss 271 logo on here is super clean. So as you can see, everything is included within this box when it comes to hardware, just to make the install simple and easy. And when it comes to the Turbo Inlet Pipe, this is made out of A356 T6 aluminum, so it is high strength, very lightweight, and it's not hard to see from your engine bay for sure. And I already know this thing is going to look so nice with everything else I have under the hood. So without further ado, let's go ahead and install it, and I'll review it afterwards as well. So to get started, one of the very first things we're going to do is take off the air intake tube. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the whole intake off just so I have enough room. And I'm also going to have to remove my shrouds from 271 so I have more room to work for the new Turbo Inlet Pipe. So when you have your intake out, you also want to take this coupler out. So go ahead and just loosen up this clamp, and you can go ahead and twist this off. Now we'll set this aside because we'll have to change this coupler for the new one for the Turbo Inlet Pipe. Now we're going to remove two screws on the evap valve, which is a T30 Torx hex bit. So just go ahead and start removing this one. Should be pretty easy to take off. And then we'll just set this aside somewhere safe. And when you have those two screws off, we're going to go ahead and unclip them from these clips over here. And then we're going to tuck them to the side for now. And this is kind of like the general area where you can tuck them, and then we'll come back to that later. And what we want to do is remove this 10mm bolt back here. So just use a 10mm socket and we'll get that off. So let's just go ahead and get this off. We'll also just set this one aside. Now we're going to go ahead and relocate the coolant reservoir. So we're just going to pull it up from the bracket here, and it should be pretty simple to take out. And we're going to put it on this side over here. But right here is fine. There is one clip for the coolant hose here, and then I'm just putting it right here for the time being. Now we're going to remove 4 10mm bolts here. So the first 2 are from the vacuum bracket, which is these 2. Then we have 2 bolts from the wiring loom cover, which is one right here. There's one hiding right behind here, so we'll go ahead and take those out. Should be fairly simple, but while you're working throughout this area, make sure you're very careful with your AC line. You don't want to damage that, because then you'll have more problems, which we don't want. Use a 10mm socket and a ratchet just to get these off, and it should be fairly simple to take off. You don't need that much force when it comes to taking these out. As you can see, I'm just kind of spinning it from hand. I mean, the initial twist that you'll loosen it up with needs more force, but this should be pretty simple. So when you get those 4 bolts off, we're going to go ahead and unplug the wastegate actuator by pushing the very top of the clip here with one finger. So I'm just kind of pushing this part here, and then I'm pulling up. It should be pretty easy to pull out, as you can see. And once you have it off, we're just going to go ahead and set it aside, like this whole wire loom here, just so we can work on this area next. And one thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put blue painter's tape here, just so nothing gets into the plug itself. And we can keep the pins in there clean, as well as the wastegate actuator here. I'm also just going to plug this with blue painter's tape, just so I can keep it safe from any dirt getting in there. So now we're going to go ahead and slide the 2 hose clamps on these 2 rubber hoses here. So just use a plier just so it's easier. We're going to go ahead and take these down. Same thing for this one. So now we're going to go ahead and actually twist these so we can have the seal break on them, but you don't want to twist too much and break the hoses, so just twist them a little bit and then it should be able to come off. And once you break the seal, you can kind of just pull it off, and it'll be the same thing for the bottom one there. So when you pull this off, it'll come off like that, and same thing for this guy. It's going down little by little, and if you don't have hose pliers, you can just use a flathead screwdriver just to kind of like pry it down little by little, but you don't want to be too forceful and break the rubber hoses. But once you have it free, we're going to go ahead and tuck these aside as well for now. Now we're going to go ahead and remove 2 12mm bolts. So one of them is actually right there, then one of them is back here. So that bolt back here, that's the one we're going to go ahead and remove, and then we'll go from there. So I'm using a 12mm socket, and then I'm also using a bunch of extensions just so I can safely remove this one here. And it won't take too much force to budge, so just be really careful with the AC line once again. You don't want to bend that or break it. And same thing for the one back here. It's again not that much force needed, and it should come off. And you want to just safely remove the bolt. And this is where my handy magnetic tool comes in. It helps me out here. There we go. So now here's the tricky part. Unfortunately, Honda used a single-use hose clamp on this turbo inlet pipe, so these are a bit difficult to move. But what we're going to do is use a Dremel, which is what I'm going to do. But when you're doing this, you want to make sure you place a flathead screwdriver here, and we just kind of want to remove as much of the clamp here so that we can just break off the whole thing and we don't have to worry about cutting the hose by accident. So you can use a grinder, a Dremel, or even shears just to make it even easier for you, but this is the only thing I have, so we're going to go ahead and make it work. So I finally got it off after a little while of messing with this thing, and you can just take this clamp off. And then I did put blue painter's tape and a microfiber towel under here just so if anything were to come off from this clamp, it'll catch it. Now we just got to take this down from the tube here. Now I'm just cranking this tube off. Just like that. So now we're going to pinch off the coolant line, and what I did is I put some blue painter's tape again, and I'm just using these pliers with some blue painter's tape, and I'm just finding the right amount of squeeze on here, and I'm pretty much just going to lock it like that, just so we can prevent coolant from leaking everywhere, and just keep your microfiber towel here, and you can even double it up just to make sure it doesn't get everywhere. And then this clamp here, I'm going to use some pliers just to move this out of the way, just like that. And then we're going to pull this off from this tube here. So what I'm doing is I'm just using my pliers just to move it upwards little by little, just so we can get this tube off. And you just want to be really gentle so you don't break your tube. We'll just take that off. As you can see, some coolant is leaking, but we can prevent that from happening just as long as we have this wrench here. And there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to place another towel down here, and then we're going to loosen up these clamps and hoses as well. And make sure you have enough microfiber towel just so it catches any coolant leak down there. And same thing, just going to put these clamps up the hose here. And once again, you're just kind of giving them a little twist, and then it should pop off. Just like that. Oh my god, that's so much. Hold up. And so when removing the turbo inlet pipe, the OEM one, you want to make sure you plug the coolant line that we took off the rubber hose from, just so it doesn't leak everywhere. So I have it plugged up right now, and then let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Now we're going to go ahead and remove 3 10mm bolts. We're going to do this one, and this one, just so it helps us have more space and not scratch the 271 turbo inlet pipe when putting it on. So just go ahead and loosen this up. And once you have those bolts off, you're just going to go ahead and put the bracket behind this screw hole here, just so it's nice and tucked away. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the clamp from the breather hose here. So kind of the same concept when we were using the Dremel to get this thing off. But this time I'm just going to use this guy just to kind of pry off the single-use clamp here. And then you want to just be really careful with the rubber tube here so you don't break it. So just go ahead and work that and get this clamp off. So this is pretty much what I'm doing. I'm just chipping away at the clamp here carefully so that when I have most of the material off, I can just pry it off and it'll come off. And there we go. Now all we need to do is press this down with a flathead screwdriver so we can get this thing off from here. So we're just going to work around the perimeter here just so we can break the seal, and little by little, carefully, and then should be able to take it off. There we go. And here's a quick comparison between the two. And as you can see, the OEM is more like a pancake style. If you look in here, there's a lot of restrictive pathways, while as the 271 turbo inlet pipe, it's just massive. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the 32-37 hose clamp that's included in the kit, and we're gonna put this breather hose on the 271 inlet pipe. So when putting the clamp on the breather, it'll look like this. And then we're just gonna go ahead and put this on here. Just gonna slide that in there. There is gonna be like a little nub on the breather here. You can take that off if you want to. I actually might take that off just so I don't have to worry about it. And I want this as flush as I can on here. So I got the nub off. Now I'm just gonna make this flush. So I have it all snug to the turbo inlet pipe here all around. And from here we're gonna go ahead and tighten it up so that it doesn't roll on the bead here. So just make sure it's nice and snug, and it doesn't have to be super tight on here. So there we go. Just make sure this is nice and secure in here. and that it doesn't move, and then you should be all set. Now we're going to slide up 2 clamps, one from the bypass valve, which is right here. So there's a clamp in here that looks like this. You're going to slide that one up from back here. And then the one at the bottom here, this one, we're also going to slide that up so we can take this line out. And it'll look like this. And so the bigger hose here, we're going to put down the clamp just like what I did. And we're going to take this off. Now when you have this off, we're going to go ahead and place the 13mm spring clamp that is included in the kit, which is way bigger than the OEM here. So I'm just going to put it here. Then we're going to grab the 5.5mm ID silicone hose, and then I'm just going to put this in here. And just put it as snug as you can on here, just like so. And it'll look just like this. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the tinier one here. So let's go ahead and get this one off, and then we'll replace it with the bigger tube. So now we're going to remove this tiny one here. I moved the clamp already. And then same thing on this one, just remove this clamp here, and then we'll replace it with the 9-inch long silicone hose that we'll cut in half in a second. So both the tubes are off. Now we're going to take this guy here, which is the 9-inch long silicone hose, and then we're going to cut it right in half. So I got the hose cut in half, and we're going to put it onto the plugs that we took it off from. But before that, make sure you grab the 11mm spring clamp. Then you're just going to put it on each end here and here for both of them, so you have 4 clamps, and then we'll move from there. So here we go. So the clamps are going to look like that. So just make sure you orient it this way, and then it'll slightly compress the tubes here, as well as this one right here. So just make sure that you have everything all set and secured, and I have the other one at the other end here, which we'll go ahead and fix in a second. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put everything back in like we took it off. So this one's going to go to the bypass valve here that I have covered right now, and then we'll clamp it up later, and just make sure it's all the way snug onto the bypass valve there. And then this tube here, I'm going to put it back to where it came from, and then I'm just going to pull this one up here, and then we're just going to resecure the clamps, the 13mm clamp that we put on here, and then the OEM clamp down here. We'll just put it back up to where it was before. Just go ahead and do that. So there we go, I got all the clamps all tightened up here, even the OEM one down there. Then I also have the ones up here. Just make sure it's nice and flush with the bump here, and then just pull up the clamps and make sure they're all secured, and then we'll move from there. So once you have that all set, we're going to go ahead and remove the T-wire cover here. There should be 6 clips all around here, and then we just want to open this up and put this aside because we're not reusing it. So here's what it looks like. There's going to be like little clips there that you can just pry off either with a pick tool, or you can even use a flathead screwdriver, which I did. And I just went ahead and picked all 6 of them all the way down here, and then we're just going to remove this whole thing. So here's a closer look at all these 6 clips. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and then 6 right here. And then your wires are going to be open here for right now, but we're going to go ahead and fix that in a second. But first we're going to go ahead and remove 2 clips from the wastegate actuator plug here. So there's going to be 2 clips. This is going to be one of them. Go ahead and remove this one. Just like that. And I thought the other clip was on the other side, but it's actually this top one here. So you're going to remove that, and then it's going to be like that. So now we're going to grab our provided T from the kit, and then we're going to go ahead and cover up the wires here. Make sure everything is clipped on. And then once you have it all secured here, you're going to grab the provided heat shrink tube, and then we're going to put this over the wastegate cover here. So we're just going to put this over just like that, and then we're going to slide it up to the T cover here. And then from here, you're going to go ahead and use a heat gun to heat shrink the tube. And make sure when you're heating this up, part of the heat shrink tube should cover the wiring loom T cover. So once you're done heat treating it, it's going to look like that, and then some part of it's going to cover the wire once again, and also the T cover. And then it is completely optional if you want to put electrical tape on the other ends that are open, but I'm for sure going to do that just so I have extra protection on this side and also this side. And a 10-inch cut of electrical tape should work just fine. So I have it all taped up. And one tip when putting on electrical tape, make sure you don't stretch it so it's nice and strong on there. You can even use a heat gun just to smooth out everything. And then we're going to put back this cover on the wastegate plug here. So now we're finally going to go ahead and put on the turbo inlet pipe. But first, make sure you grab the provided turbo flange gasket and put it onto the turbo down there. So I'm going to go ahead and put on this flange down here. You can use this bolt that's already on there for guidance. It should look just like that. Then we're going to go ahead and line up the turbo inlet pipe. And then there's going to be a bunch of wires here that might be in the way, so just try your best to work around that and have it not in the way. We're just going to line everything up here. So here it is. What I did was I kind of scooped it in there, and my best tip is you kind of try your best to align it with the bolt already on the turbo, and then you're going to put back the nut that we took off earlier, which is the 12 socket size, and then we have the 12mm bolt back here. But before tightening it up, make sure that your gasket is nice and lined up with everything before you put everything back on. And so let's go ahead and move on, and then we'll fully tighten everything else later. So from here, we're going to go ahead and connect the lower rubber coolant feed line to the turbocharger. So it's this one right here. So I'm going to put it back on without spilling any more coolant than I already have. So just like that. Then we're going to grab the OEM clamp, just put it back on to where it used to be, and then you're all set there. So once you have the lower rubber coolant hose back on, we're going to go ahead and put back this one that we took off earlier, which is the upper rubber coolant feeding line. So we're just going to put it back on and then tighten up the clamp as well down there. So it's all set there. We're going to grab the 11 to 20 hose clamp, and then we're going to put it onto the OE rubber hose here. So it's going to be oriented like this, and then you're going to go ahead and tighten this up as long as it's snug, and then we're all set here with the coolant tubes and everything else. So now we're going to go ahead and put back the evap valve, which is this one. You want to get the provided gasket, and we'll attach it onto this side back here. And then we're going to use the OEM T30 hardware that we took off earlier. So we're going to put this over, and then we're going to put it over here. Just want to make sure that each bolt is aligned with the gasket. There we go. So I have it all secured. Just make sure you don't over tighten it. A good snug fit should be good. And then we're going to go ahead and torque the bolt that we put on the turbocharger at the bottom of the turbo inlet pipe, as well as the 12mm bolt down there. And we're going to torque that to 18 pound-feet of torque. So let's go ahead and do that. Just go ahead and torque it down. There we go. And then same thing with the bolt back here. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and put back the 3 bolts that we took off, and they're going to be going back onto the vacuum lines here and down here. And then you just want to tighten these up, and then we'll move on from there. And once you have that set, if you haven't already, make sure you put up the vacuum lines back where they used to be, and then put the clamp on there, as well as the ones down here. I already did it earlier, so I don't have to worry about that. Now we're just going to go ahead and get the M5 flange bolts, and we're going to go ahead and put it onto the bracket that's right here. So what you want to do is you want to bring up this bracket just so it aligns with the holes over here. So these are the 2 bolts we put on, and then now we're going to go ahead and torque them to 8 pound-feet of torque. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and plug in the wastegate actuator back, and just make sure you hear a click, and then you're all good there. And we're going to grab our coolant reservoir, and then we're just going to put it back to where it was, back here, all set there. And now we're going to get our hybrid cold air intake coupler, and this will be the same steps if you have the parallel intake. And then there's also different options if you have the OEM or the short ram intake. You'll have different couplers as well. So we're going to go ahead and slide this over. I'm going to keep the clamps on here, so you'll grab the 95 to 103 millimeter clamp for the big side, then the smaller side will be 73 to 81, and then we'll go ahead and put this on here. And then you just want to make sure that this is to the left as much as you can, and make sure it's nice and snug on there. So for the OEM coupler, we're going to go ahead and take this off here so we can go ahead and connect it to the new one for the big turbo inlet pipe here. Then from here, once you have the old coupler off, we're going to go ahead and put this one on here, just like so. And then you want to make sure that it's oriented where your MAF sensor is easy plug and play. So make sure that the wire is not straining whenever you have it on. So make sure you have it oriented the right way. And then you just want to make sure these are nice and flush with the MAF housing here. And when you have it flush, you can go ahead and tighten it up. And then this one, I actually changed the orientation just so I don't have to worry about it poking. If I tighten this up, this is poking out, so I don't want to poke the hood liner. So I just want to make sure that this is all set and secure as well. So go ahead and tighten this up, and this clamp as well. Then from here, the last one we're going to do is put back your intake. So I'm going to go ahead and put my cold air intake from 271, and then we'll be all set from there. And the last thing, once you have your intake back on, just put your O2 sensor back, and then all you have to do is just double check everything, and that pretty much completes the installation for the 271 Performance Turbo Inlet Pipe. Also, one last thing, if you're worried about your hood insulation getting in the way of your turbo inlet pipe, you have the option of rearranging it and making sure you have enough room, but that's completely optional. You have enough space, and when I close my hood, it's perfectly fine. So you can also do what I did. So here's the final result. The install wasn't too bad whatsoever, especially with the dozuki app that 271 has. Now with this turbo inlet pipe, the one thing I like that 271 did was the fact that it is a one-piece construction type of TIP. It is very sleek, as you can see, and it's a direct drop-in fit, which is amazing. Plus, on top of that, if you're worried about needing a tune, you don't need a tune for this one, and you will not have a CEL as well. So if you plan on getting one, you don't have to worry about any of that. As for performance improvements, it has the potential of giving you an increase of 6-wheel horsepower and 4-wheel torque to 26-wheel horsepower and 15-wheel torque if you have an optimized tune with this setup. Stock-wise, if you run this turbo inlet pipe, it'll be on the lower side of numbers, but honestly, it is a great start if you plan on getting more performance mods in the future, like a front mount intercooler or even a bigger turbo. So after driving with this thing on for a couple of days, the throttle response is much better and the lag is less. The turbo noise is more audible as well, which I really like. When it comes to turbo noise, here's a little comparison between when I didn't have the 271 turbo inlet pipe versus when I put it on. So as you can see, there is a pretty big difference when it comes to noise, and with the shroud off, it's actually way louder, but I tend to keep it on anyway just because I want to have the lowest IATs. When it comes to sizing, this actually has the largest diameter inlet pipe on the market as of today. This is a 80mm inlet pipe, and yes, it's way bigger than the OEM, but for a good reason. And as you saw earlier, the comparison between the OEM pancake stock Honda inlet pipe, there's so many restrictions in there, and this thing is completely hollow, which gives you way more airflow. And honestly, this thing next to the OEM one, it is so much bigger, and the OEM pancake inlet pipe is very, very tiny. Plus, in the future, if I end up getting a bigger turbocharger, which is probably not going to happen anytime soon, this will be way more beneficial so it can feed the new turbo all the air it needs. And one last thing, this turbo inlet pipe from 271 actually works for different few intakes, whether you have the OEM one or the 271 short ram intake or the PRL high volume intake. This will work for you, which is really sick. 271 is really good at making their products customizable, and they do their best to make it compatible with other parts, so you're always left satisfied. And I am for sure satisfied with how well this performs. And I mean, just look at it. If you have a 80mm inlet pipe staring at you like that, what else could you ask for? Big thanks to 271 once again. I'm left amazed with your guys' high quality products. Customer service, packaging, and support is just always top notch. Especially Vlad R from the 271 team. Thank you so much for making sure I got the right parts for my current setup. And I honestly appreciate that so much. And when it comes to asking any questions, whether it's about their products or your build, they will get back to you as soon as they can, which is super helpful. Because then you're left, feeling reassured with what you're getting from them and what you're getting for yourself when it comes to your own build. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. And as for right now, I really don't know what I'll be doing next to this car, but everything runs perfectly fine, and I'm honestly so satisfied with how well everything runs when it comes to having pretty much all of the 271 performance parts. There are only a couple of things that I'm missing, like the 271 big turbo or like their map sensors that I'm not sure if I'm gonna get in the future. So we'll see what happens, but that's the fun part of trusting the process, right? As for right now, the car runs amazing, no issues whatsoever, and it feels really good with everything on. So anyways, as always, stay safe and drive safe out there, you guys. I'll catch you on the next one.